And it's my great pleasure to be introducing this evening's talk on the subject of the culture of ornament in Japan. This is a story, I suppose, of embellishment, of decoration, of excess, of abundance that might run counter to the stories of restraint, simplicity, plainness that are often more readily associated with the arts of Japan. This evening's talk is in conjunction with, in celebration of the opening of our new exhibition, Kumihimo. There will be an opportunity to see the exhibition if you haven't already. Our galleries will be open after this talk until 8:30. I am delighted to be introducing tonight's speaker, Hashimoto Mari. Hashimoto-san is a writer and editor who specializes in Japanese arts. She is the vice chair of the Eisei Bunko Museum. She is a visiting professor at the Kanazawa Institute of Technology. Recent publications include Decorating Japan, the 3-volume Following Japanese History with Art, and Appreciating Japanese Arts in Kyoto, among others. Hashimoto Mari co-wrote 100% Hokusai and edited a complete collection of Japan. As well as being a regular contributor to newspapers and magazines, Hashimoto-san appears on art programs on NHK and produces the Nikoniko Art Museum videos on the Nikoniko video sharing platform. And I think for me, why your work is so important is the way in which it brings these conversations around Japanese arts and culture to a wider audience. Tonight, in addition to everyone here in this room, we're live streaming. So we're broadcasting live on Zoom, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on LinkedIn. So a very warm welcome to our online visitors. A recording of the event will also be archived on our website. Hashimoto-san will talk for about 40 minutes, and there'll be time for questions at the end. If you're watching on Zoom, you can also put questions to Hashimoto-san via the Q&A on Zoom. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Hashimoto Mari.
皆さん、今ご紹介をいただきました橋本真理と申します。
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hashimoto Mari, as been introduced by Sam.
今回の組紐展のキュレーターを務めました。
I am the curator of the exhibition Kumihimo.
でこれから私の、これまでやってきた仕事を少しご紹介させていただいて、その後、本来の、今日のメインのテーマに入っていきます。
I'd like to start off my talk this evening by introducing some of the works that I have been involved in, and then we would move on to the culture of ornament in Japan.
サムさんからご紹介になった通り、いろいろな仕事をしてるんですが、今思い出したんですけれども、冒頭に皆さんがご覧いただいた2、30秒ほどの短い、映像ありました。あの中の、様々なパーツの撮影のコーディネーションをやったことを今思い出しました。
Some touched on some of the works that I have worked in. It tends to go over quite different fields, but I just remembered the reel that you just have seen before the big start of the event. I have coordinated a lot of those filmings, so I just remembered. So I will share that with you now.
黒いお茶碗がありましたけれども、あれは私の美術館が持っているものです。
And you may remember the tea bowl, small black tea bowl, and that is actually one of the collections of the museum that I am the vice chair in.
はい、では話を始めましょう。
Let us begin the event.
はい、ご紹介にあった通り、いろいろ本を書いたり、映像番組に出演したりしているんですが、近年の一番主な、著作ということで、2022年に刊行されたのが飾る日本、まさに今日のテーマです。
So I have written books, appeared in TV programs as part of my work that I do. The most recent work, which came out in 2022, is Decorating Japan, as been introduced by Sam.
あるいは、これは大きな日本美術の全集ですけれども、こういったものの編集、あるいは執筆にも関わっています。
I am also involved in writing and editing of the collection of books such as this. This is the entire collection of Japanese art and its history.
そしてキュレーションも、今回の組紐展だけではなく、いくつかやっています。近年のものをご紹介します。
I have taken on curation, not only with Kumihimo, as I've mentioned, but I would like to share some of the recent exhibitions that I was involved in.
これは京都の細見美術館で行った末法展という展覧会ですが、杉本博さん、現代美術作家の杉本博さんと、共同でキュレーションしました。
This is the image from Mappo exhibition that we held in Japan, which I co-curated with Sugimoto Hiroshi, a contemporary Japanese artist. Mappo means the age of the degeneration.
そして、これは2021年、北斎尽くしという展覧会です。
And this is from 2021, 100% Hokusai.
建築家の種剛さんと、種剛さんが会場構成、私がキュレーションということで、北斎の作品が展示ケースからはみ出して、増殖していくようなイメージの展覧会を行いました。
The exhibition design was taken on by Tane Tsuyoshi, an architect, and we have tried to exhibit Hokusai's works not only within the case, but them being expanding into the space itself.
あるいは、自然科学の機構書、これは日本のものだけではなくてヨーロッパのものも含みますけれども、その機構書のコレクションを紹介する世界を変えた書物展などもキュレーションしています。
And also I have curated the exhibition on world-changing books, which introduced rare books which on mostly natural history and sciences.
はい、あるいは全く雰囲気が違いますけれども、ご存知の方も多いと思います。人気があるゲーム、今日本で非常に人気のあるゲームですね、刀剣乱舞ですけれども、こちらの文化監修も行っています。
And this may look slightly different from the previous exhibitions examples, but Token Rambu is one of the most popular games at the moment in Japan. Some of you may know this. I was involved in the management of the final designs of this.
はい。といったところで、そろそろ本題に入っていきたいと思います。
And that is some examples of my work. And now we are moving on to the main event this evening.
さあ、日本文化について話をするときに、余白であるとか、シンプリシティ、あるいは引き算、詫びといった言葉が出てきます。その話をしてくださいと言われることが多いです。
When I get a request to talk about Japanese culture and its art, a lot of the request tends to be focused on, can you talk about the simplicity of it, how there are subtraction from the space and negative space.
なんですけれども、今日はそれとは別の、あるいはそれと対になると言えばいいんでしょうか。飾るという、コンセプトについてお話をしたいと思います。
However, we are going in the opposite direction today. We will talk about the embellishment, adornment in Japan.
飾るという言葉が意味するところは、いろいろなものを付け加えて美しくすること、あるいは立派にすることだと辞書に書いてあります。
When you look at the dictionary in the statement of kazaru, embellishment, adornment, they explain that it is to make an object or the space more beautiful by adding an object or products in.
ただ多くの場合、その飾るという行為が物の本質を覆い隠してしまうということで、ネガティブな評価を受けることが多いかもしれません。
A lot of the times, this act of embellishment is seen as negative because it implies that you are concealing the essence of the object itself.
特に近代以降、そういった感覚が強いのではないかと思います。
I believe this understanding or the idea has become into more prominence from modern age onwards.
では、視点を過去に、近代以前に向けてみたいと思います。
But let's go back into the history beyond the modern ages.
飾ると同じ、そうですね、似た意味を持つ言葉に、荘厳という言葉があります。
There is a word, shogun, solemnity, which has a similar meaning to kazaru, embellishment.
これはもともと仏教の中の言葉なんですが、仏像であるとか、あるいはお寺の建物であるとか、そういったものを厳かに美しく飾ることです。
It's a word rooted in Buddhism. It is to embellish the religious buildings of Buddhist buildings, religious buildings, as well as Buddha statues.
要するに信仰としての行為なわけですね。
It was an act of worship.
確かに飾るという行為には宗教的な側面が含まれると私は考えています。
I believe act of embellishing really has a religious connotation and meanings.
皆さんも、祝祭の場で飾られたオーナメントであるとか、あるいはその衣装の飾り、そういったものが何らかの宗教的な熱狂であるとか、陶酔を引き起こすものだということはよくご存知だと思います。
I'm sure you have seen and experienced some of those occasions at an celebratory events, or those occasions that you would see a lot of the ornaments and costumes being embellished, and that they are part of the ecstatic nature of those events.
何かあるものを日常とは異なる存在に変貌させてしまうものが飾るという行為なのだと思います。
I believe there is an element of mutation, going from everyday to extraordinary events.
さあ、少し先に進みましょう。
Let's go to the next slide.
かな。はい。飾りの起源、日本における飾りの起源としての一つとして、見られているのが、かざしの花ですね。造花の髪飾りです。
Kazashi no hana that you can see on the slide is seen as the origin of embellishments in Japan. It is, they are hair accessories made of artificial flowers, made of paper.
本当に5世紀、6世紀という、古代からこのかざしというものが、存在しています。
This kazashi existed from the ancient times, from around 5th to the 6th century.
で本来は、オリジナルの行為としては、花であるとか、例えば藤の花のように房の垂れ下がった花であるとか、あるいはつるとか、葉っぱとか、葉とか、そういったものを髪に飾る。それがかざしでした。
Originally, before this kazashi, they would decorate hair with natural plants and flowers. For example, wisteria, vines, leaves would be used as ornaments.
そうやって髪に刺した飾りが、風を受けてこう揺れる、ざわめく、その動きに神の降臨を感じたわけです。
Japanese saw the sense of God and the spirit of God in how those ornaments would move with how, as the wind would sweep the hair.
日本の神様というのは目に見えない存在です。ですから、失礼、大丈夫ですか。目に見えない存在です。神自体は姿が見えない。代わりにその力の働きが何か物を動かすとか、目に映るものとしてはその力の働きだけが目に映るわけです。
Japanese gods historically are traditional beings, invisible beings, excuse me. And so you cannot see what they look like. But how people really sensed their presence was by something being moved with the force, natural force. And it was believed to exist with the nature in such ways.
例えば神社で見ることがあるかもしれません。ぬさとかしでとか呼ばれる棒の先に紙を切ったひらひらしたものがついている、そういう道具ですね。
And you may have seen this in a Japanese shrine. They are called the nusa or shide, made of white papers, attached to a wooden pole, which would move with the wind.
これも元はおそらく植物そのものをつけていたと思われますけれども、それが揺れることで神の訪れを感じる、あるいは神がそこに降りてくるためのよりしろになる、そういうものでした。
I believe they were made of real plants as well, originally. But it was to feel the movement by the wind as well, to really feel the presence of the God and how the force is in one with the nature.
そういった聖なるものを招く、あるいは引き寄せるものが飾りだったわけです。
Ornaments were something to invite the presence of God.
さあ、そういった聖なるものを招き寄せる力を持たせた者たちをこれから見ていきたいと思います。
Let's look at those ornaments with the sacred presence inside.
はい。一番古いものではこのあたりでしょうか。
Those probably would be the oldest examples that I am going to show you.
5000年前の縄文土器です。
And they are Jomon pottery from 5,000 years ago.
あたかも炎が燃え上がるかのような形をとっている。
And this is called Heian pottery as well, to really show how the flames are being flared up.
本来煮炊きをするための道具なので、このような飾りは機能としては必要ないんですけれども、何らかの理由で飾りが施されました。
And these ornaments are not strictly necessary because they would be used for cooking purposes, but for whatever reasons, they decided to embellish the pottery in such way.
そして、これは、仏教の領域で使われた飾りですね。ケマンと言います。
And these are Buddhist ornaments called keman.
もともとは、インドで寺院の花飾りとして使われていたものが、素材が変わって、牛の皮を使ったり、金属を使ったりした飾りになりました。
They originate from India, and originally they were believed to have been floral decorations. But in Japan, they were made with cow skin and metals.
メタルの方に組紐の形が表されているのも見て取れます。
And you can see the shapes of Kumihimo on the right hand one, and the one that made with metal.
あるいは農装束の唐織。
Or karaori, which is used for a formal no costume.
これも組紐が使われているものですね。甲冑です。
And this is the samurai armor where you see kumihimo is being used.
会場にも、組紐を使った甲冑が展示されていますけれども、
as part of the exhibition, you will see that samurai armor is also being displayed, which has a lot of kumihimo inside.
この甲冑の場合は、白い組紐だけではなくて、その中に色を変えた赤い組紐を混ぜることで日の丸を表しています。
In this particular example, you see that white is used as a background and the red circle is placed in the middle. This showcases the Japanese flag symbol. 日の丸。
あるいは刀を収める鞘ですね。
And or on the scabbard, saya scabbard of a Japanese sword.
これ拡大しないとなかなか細部までわからないんですけれども、非常にさまざまな蒔絵が施されています。漆による装飾が施されています。
You wouldn't be able to see unless we enlarge the image, but on the scabbard there is a makie picture painting is being done with urushi lacquer.
いずれも素晴らしい作品ばかりなんですが、これについて長く話をしていると先へ進めないので、美しいものがありますというところです。
all these are extremely beautiful examples, but we don't have much time, so we will move on. And they are the examples that I wanted to show you.
さあ、この飾るという言葉と対になる、あるいは対立するコンセプト、言葉といえば何になるのかということも考えてみました。
I have thought what would be the acronym of antonym to embellishment, kazaru.
でこれは、日本料理、和食の研究家の方と話しているときに出てきたキーワードです。
And the key word came out when I was speaking to a Japanese cuisine expert.
すますという言葉ですね。
Sumasu, to purify.
はい。和食に詳しい方は、おすましという料理があることをご存知かもしれません。
For those of you who are well versed in Japanese cuisine may know osumashi, which is a type of Japanese soup.
いわゆる出汁ですね。カツオとか昆布で引く出汁からアクを限界まで取り去って、本当に最小限の味付けしかしない、本当に澄み切ったスープです。
Osumashi is made with dashi broth with bonito flakes and seaweed, but you take away any impurities, and it is the most purified form of dashi tastes, and you don't add much condiments on it at all. So it is the taste is as clear as it could get.
非常にシンプルで、そこには何もないように見えるんですけれども、手が込んでいて深い味がする。
It is extremely simple, and just by looking at it, you wouldn't think that much work has been put in. But in fact, it has been taken a long time to prepare that one dish.
例えばそれはもしかすると、今回、Kumihimo展で、会場構成を担当していただいた建築家の三井玲さんが、意図された何もないことを、コンセプトとした今回の会場構成のデザインと通じる話かもしれません。
This idea of purification, to purify, could relate to the theme of the exhibition design that was done by Mitsui-rei. He talked about, he designed with the idea of nothingness.
後で会場をもう一度ご覧いただき、後でと言っても、後ではないですね。明日にでも、はい、会場をまた確認していただきたいんですが、展示を鑑賞するのに、何も妨げになる、ストレスになるものがない、ノイズがない状態を作ること。
I'd like you to have a look at the exhibition if you haven't, either later after this event or tomorrow. But his idea was to create a space where there are no stressors or no noise at all, nothing to distract you.
集中すべき対象、つまり展示物にスムーズに集中できるような環境を作り出すこと。
How the space would allow you to focus on the exhibits only and nothing else.
でそこには非常に多くの、作業があるわけですけれども、実際に観客が、見るもの、感じるものというのはあくまで展示物だけであるということです。
To create that space, a lot of work would go in to ensure that environment is being provided. But what the visitor would see is none of those time spent. They would just see the exhibits.
そういった例えば思考であるとか作業であるとか時間であるとか非常に多くのリソースを費やしていながら結果として目に映るものがシンプルであることがもしかすると済ますということなのかなと考えています。
So regardless of the thoughts and the design and the actual works and the time spent on the installation, you would get with the state of pure space. I think that relates to the idea of this sumasu, pure, the idea of purified state.
ですから、済ますというのは明晰な論理に基づいて、緻密な操作によって実現する、行為ですね。
This purified state can only be brought with a clear and well laid out logic being precisely delivered.
でその結果、我々は非常に明晰な論理によって理解に至る。何事かの理解に至る。
So because of that space environment is being provided, we would be able to understand the ideas and something in a clear logic of our own.
で一方、飾るの方も、同じように緻密な操作が必要なんですが、その結果、起こることといえば、その恍惚とした感覚を得るとか、陶酔するとか、熱狂的に興奮するとか、そういった祝祭的な、非日常的な感覚に至る。それが飾るなのかと考えています。
And the act of embellishment does require a lot of thoughts and the precise actions of delivering those decorations, but the end result is not a pure state. It is more of an ecstatic state. And I believe those differences are what makes the purified state and decorated state to be, the effects are different in such ways.
別の言葉で言えば、アポロン的、ディオニソス的というような言い方もできるかもしれません。
In other words, I could say that the act of embellishing is more Dionysian, and the act of providing purified states is Apollonian.
ちょっと実際のものを見ながらその話を続けましょう。
And I will show you some of the examples on both states.
例えば悪い意味で装飾的という時の、代表例が金、ゴールドです。
When you think about decoration, gaudiness in a negative terms, a lot of people would talk about how things look very gold and golden.
ですけれども、これは極めて近代的な感覚で、時代を遡ればまさに違う価値観として、金の価値というものが現れてきます。
But this idea of gold being ostentatious is a very contemporary idea. If you look back in the history, gold was treated differently.
例えば仏教における金というのはマテリアルとしての黄金ではなくて仏の知恵を象徴する光の表現になるものです。
For example, the color gold used in Buddhist context is not to show the material itself. It is to represent the light, which is being brought from the wisdom of Buddha.
さあ、有名な京都の六恩寺金閣ですね。
And this is the picture of Rokuonji, Kinkakuji Temple, which is world famous.
元は14世紀の末に建てられたものですが、一旦火事で燃えて、1955年に再建されたのが現在の金閣です。
Originally, it was built in the 14世紀
14世紀末。
16世紀
14
sorry, at the end of 14th century, but it was rebuilt in the 20th century again.
でここはもともと武家の最高権力者であった足利義満が個人的な祈りを捧げるための空間としてメディテーションルームのように作られました。
Originally, it was built as the private meditation room, prayer room for Ashikaga Yoshimitsu, who was the ruler of all the samurai clans in the Muromachi period.
これがその金閣の3階最上層ですね。
And this is the top floor of Kinkakuji Temple, on the second floor.
床が水面のように見えますが、これは実は黒い漆が塗られています。
The floor may look like it is filled with water, but in fact it is painted with urushi lacquer.
そこに天井、壁に貼られた金箔の金の光が映り込んでいる。
And the gold coating has been done on the walls and on the ceiling, and that is reflected on the floor.
そして部屋の中央には、義満が祈りを捧げた仏像が置かれています。
In the center of the room is the statue of Buddha is being placed where Yoshimitsu was praying to.
シンプルにも見えるんですけれども、黄金であるとか、あるいは、漆が塗られた非常に過剰な空間ではないかと私には思います。
You could call this a simplistic design, but because it is embellished with yellow gold and urushi, I think it is a design of excess.
なんて言うんでしょう。この空間に身を置いたらどうだろうかと、想像したときに、その漆の手触りであるとか、金の光であるとか、そういうものに包まれたときに、ちょっとこれはトリップをするのではないかなと思うほどの、官能的な空間だと思います。
I think if I were to place myself in that room, imagining touching the texture of urushi on the floor, feeling the light emanating from the golden walls and the ceiling, I think it would end up, I would feel quite trippy almost. It would probably put me in a state of euphoric state.
もう一つ、この黄金の空間として、日本文化史上最大の悪趣味建築と評価される、建物があります。
And there is another example of golden architecture. It's seen as the most distasteful creation amongst the Japanese cultural history.
常にそのわびとかシンプリシティという言葉とともに語られる茶の湯の世界で、これほど黄金に光り輝く茶室というのはなんて悪趣味なんだろう。そういうふうに言われてきました。
The reason being, the world of tea ceremony is seen as the encapsulation of this idea of wabi, simplicity. But within that world sphere, somebody has created the yellow golden tea room, and that is seen as the reason for the most distasteful claim.
ありえないって感じですよね。
Yeah, most people's reaction would be, no way, that's just not at the area to go for.
で、これは16世紀に、豊臣秀吉が作らせた組み立て式の茶室です。
And this is the foldable tea room that was created by Toyotomi Hideyoshi.
で、天皇の住まいである皇居に運び込んで、そこで、天皇を客として、豊臣秀吉がもてなした茶室ということになります。
This was brought over to the imperial palace to host tea ceremony for the emperor. It's used for that purpose.
もちろん千利休もそこに関わっています。
And the tea ceremony master Sen no Rikyu was involved in the whole process.
で、黄金の茶室のオリジナルはすでに失われていますので、これは、ある美術館で歴史交渉をしながら再現したものです。
And the original folding tea room has it no longer exists. So this is the reconstruction that exists in a Japanese museum.
こういう状況ですね。インペリアルパレスに運び込まれた茶室を再現しています。
And this shows how the tea room is set up within the imperial palace.
で、中を見てみますと、こういう、素材というか、元の、建築素材は、板を、幾何学的に組み合わせて作られているものに、金の板が、薄い板ですけれども、板が張られているので、こういったソリッドな空間になっています。
And it is made with wood, but gold plates have been applied on top of the planks.
そして、障子にはトランスペアレントな透ける赤色の絹、そして、床には赤い毛織物が畳の上に敷かれています。
And on the shoji screen, red gold has been applied, and animal fur is filling the floor space.
きっとウール、フェルトのようなものですね。
Sorry, correction. Material made from felt.
で、戸を閉めて、ここに座っているのは私なんですけれども。
And that is me sitting in the tea room.
で、戸を閉めてしまって、その茶室の空間に身を置くとですね、黄金に囲まれている、マテリアルとしての黄金に囲まれているというよりも、光の中に身を置いている、そういう感じがします。
When the doors are closed and when I placed myself in the tea room, I didn't feel the presence of gold so much, but I really felt like I was just surrounded by light.
それは何と言うんでしょうか、サイバーパンク SF であるとか、あるいは映画のマトリックスであるとか、そういう空間の中に、意識だけがポカンと浮かんでいる、そういうイメージです。
If I were to put it in another words, it was as if my consciousness was in this science fiction film, almost like Matrix-like film, and my consciousness was floating around in that space.
一方、これと、対立するものとして、千利休が設計した大安という茶室があります。対立すると思われているものとしてですね。
There is another example of a well-known tea room called Heian, which was built by Sen no Rikyu, which you could say is at the opposite end of the spectrum to this tea room.
今回は写真がないんですけれども、非常に薄暗い、 土の塊のような、何か洞窟の中に入ったような感覚を覚える茶室です。
I don't have the image for it, but the sensation is completely different to what I've just described. It would be very dark, and a lot of the materials are made of earthen, as natural materials, and you would feel like you are inside a cave almost.
で、明るいか暗いか、あるいは黄金か土かという違いはあるんですけれども、その狭い茶室の中で、亭主と客、ゲストとホストが2人きりで向かい合うときに、起こることは同じだと考えています。
And so there are differences in textures such as light and dark, the materials as well, gold or natural. But I think what happens inside is the same. The guest is facing the host one by one, and there are no other presences, just the two beings.
要するに先ほどお話しした nothingness ですね。茶室であるとか、そのマテリアルのリアリティみたいなものはすべて消えて、むき出しの魂と魂のコミュニケーションだけがそこにある、そういう状態ではないかと思います。
So this relates back to the idea of nothingness. You are stripped down, away from your actual existence, and only your spirits and the host spirits would remain. And so it's the communication between two souls.
でそれが人と出会うのか、人と出会って、その論理に納得する、あるいは理解する、そういった出会いが生まれるのか、あるいは聖なるものと出会って熱狂や陶酔に巻き込まれるのか。それが飾ると済ます、飾ること、済ますことの、非常に見分けがたいほどの、似た部分ではないかと思います。
But those encounters, whether you are facing the communication is between the logic of human beings, or whether you would be communicating with the sacred beings and would end up with the ecstatic state. I believe those two are the stark differences in two spaces that I have shown you as examples.
おそらく両者は、あるその状態が極まったときに見分けがつかないほど似ているのではないかと思っています。
And I believe the two states are extremely similar. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference, even when you're experiencing them.
ですから同じだけの強度を持つ表現の様式の、裏と表なのか、右と左なのか分かりませんが、そういったものが、飾ること、済ますことの、本質なのではないかというふうに考えています。
So I believe the strength and the intensity of the act of purifying and decoration are the same, really. I don't know whether it's back to front or right and left, but the intensity of it is just the other side of the coin, those two.
最後に、全く違うものをお見せして終わりますけれども、これは杉本博さんが日本に作ったアートサイト、江ノ浦測候所の、一部です。
As a final image, I will present something that is quite different, but this is an image of Enoura Observatory made by Sugimoto Hiroshi.
カメラのレンズなどに使われる光学ガラスを素材として能舞台を作ったものです。
He created the No stage made of optical glass, which is used for a camera lens.
それが、海に向かって、崖の上に突き出している。非常に、その上に立つとヒヤヒヤと寒い思いをする舞台です。
It's placed on the cliff, facing out to the sea. So it is extremely thrilling to be standing on that stage, as well as cold with wind.
実際そこに壁も天井もないんですが、nothingness と言いながら、床はあり、そこに結界された聖なる空間が存在している。これが、どうぞ。
So this may look like an example of nothingness because there are no walls or ceilings. However, the floor made of optical glass does exist, and that floor creates a cordoned sacred space.
それが飾ることなのか、済ますことなのか、やはりここでも、結論がなかなか出しにくいんですけれども、こういった感覚が、日本の文化の中に、グラデーションのように存在している。ですから、必ずしも余白だけが、詫びだけが、引き算だけが日本文化ではない、かなり、複雑なグラデーションがその中にあって、それは時に飾りにも見え、済ますことにも見え、するものだということを、今日はお話しいたしました。
It is arguable whether this stage belongs to the embellishment or he has created a purified space. But it is an example of how those two exist, and it's a spectrum or gradation that forms the Japanese culture and art. So I just want to reiterate, wabi is being featured a lot in Japanese culture, but that is not the entirety of the Japanese mindset when it comes to art form. So yes, there are two sides to it.
というわけで、やや時間をすいません、オーバーしてしまいましたが、ここでお話を終わりたいと思います。ありがとうございました。
Sorry, I've gone over time slightly, but thank you for your kind attention.
Hashimoto Mari, thank you so much for the generous talk, which somehow managed to join the dots from Jomon pottery to the matrix. And I think in the way in which you've complicated and collapsed some of these binaries, I think it really sets the stage for an interesting conversation. And we do have time for some questions now. There's a roaming microphone with Adam. And if I could just ask you to wait until you have the mic until you ask your question, so people watching online can hear. Any questions? Down on the right.
Thank you so much for your insightful and inspirational talk today. I was fascinated. Actually, my question is about how you realize your concept in exhibition. I saw the exhibition of Kumihimo. It was wonderful. And as you mentioned about the architect, the designer of this exhibition, Mitsui Rei-san, that is, I think, realize your concept very well. But on the other hand, today you showed us the exhibition of Hokusai. The design was done by Tane-san, and which was complete opposite. I think, as you said, that the kind of sacredness and the say, and also the kind of desire or the human beings, the kind of zoku. The Hokusai is more about human being, and then this one, the Kumihimo, is more like the sacredness. And I thought it was very much fascinating to see these two contrast. And when you think about your exhibition, what would be the most important thing to realize your concept with designer, and how you select the designer, and if you have any other ongoing project near future, I would like to know if possible. Sorry, so many.
2つの展覧会は全く成り立ちが違います。
Two exhibitions that you mentioned, they came about very differently.
北斎尽くしに関しては、私以外の、メンバーが決まっているところに呼ばれていったという形です。
In regards to 100% Hokusai, everything was set up, including staff members, and then I was called at the last step, and then I joined the project.
ただ、方向性が全く決まっていなかったので、つまり、もう展示するものは全て決まっていたんですけれども、それをどのようなコンセプトのもとに展示するのかということが全く決まってないところに呼ばれていったんですね。それで、じゃあどうしようかということで、コンセプトを決めた。それに対して種さんが、会場構成を考えてくれた。そういう流れです。
I said everything was set up, but in fact, that's not quite correct. The main curatorial concept was not, they didn't really have any directions to go forward. So I was called in to work on that. And then Tane-san was brought in to design the exhibition.
で、組紐展に関しては、これは最初から私が、企画を立ち上げた展覧会です。
With regards to the Kumihimo exhibition, I was there from the inception of the idea.
で、組紐というのが非常に、繊細で緻密で力のある工芸品でもありますから、それをどう見せるのが、いいのか、もちろんぼんやりとしたイメージはありましたけれども、じゃあそれを誰に具現化してもらうのかというときに、そこに本人がいらっしゃいますけれども、三井玲さんにお願いするのがきっといいだろうと、その時判断しました。
Kumihimo is work that is extremely delicate and intricate, but also has the dynamic side to it as well. So I only had a vague image of how best to exhibit the exhibition. But when I thought about the theme, I thought it would be best to work with Mitsui-rei, who is over here. But yeah, so I decided to work with him.
でなぜなら、三井さんはもちろん現代建築をまさに仕事として来られた方ですけれども、同時に大学院で茶室の研究をなさっている方なんですね。
The reason being, Mitsui-san has worked on many contemporary architecture, but his research field when he was studying at university was on tea rooms.
ですから、現在のことも日本の過去の建築のことも全く同じように扱うことが、あるいは考えることができる。そういう人とであれば、今回の展覧会がきっと成功するだろうというふうに判断しました。
So that means that he is well versed in contemporary buildings as well as any historical elements as well. He would be able to consider both in equal light, and that's what I thought that quality would be necessary to bring this exhibition to success.
Thank you. And a question coming from an online viewer, which is that you talked about this idea of what you were describing as the Apollonian, kind of using the Nietzsche binary of the Apollonian and the Dionysian. The question is, when or perhaps why did this one-sided version of the history of art and design in Japan, when did that become the dominant sense of things, perhaps beyond Japan?
そうですね。おそらくは、岡倉天心の茶の本と、鈴木大拙の禅が知られるようになったところからだと思います。まあ、いずれにしても近代ですね。大拙。
I would say it probably originates from when the Book of Tea by Okakura Tenshin and the Book of Zen by Suzuki Taisetsu became well known.
Thank you. Questions from the room? Yeah, just thank you.
I have two questions. First one is, because you work with very old materials, have you ever felt like fear or like kind of spirit, kind of energy from, I mean, it's difficult to explain, but have you ever fear touching or something and looking at something, an art form? The other question is, like a Shinto ritual, sometimes you have to have purification before you touch something or something like that. Have you ever had that experience?
私は大変鈍感な人間なので、そういうことは残念ながらなかったですね。
I'm not the most sensitive person, so I've never felt anything like that.
あまりスピリチュアルな体験がないです。
I don't have any spiritual experiences.
散文的な人間なんです。
Just on the left, the second row.
ポエティックじゃないということです。
I'm not very poetic, sorry.
Hello, and thank you for a very fascinating talk. At one point during the talk, you mentioned how this idea of ornament and a kind of negative idea of ornament and gold and the words like gaudy has become a kind of modern concept that wasn't always present about in Japan also. And I wondered, has this been kind of borrowed or come from a more Western concept into Japan about ornament? Because in art history and art theory in the West, there's been a kind of a hierarchy that ornament is somehow less, modernism in the West, simplicity, architectural simplicity in everything. So is this something that then became transformed in Japan, or it's a separate trajectory?
はい、おそらく、もちろん西洋化イコール近代化だったので、そのモダニズムの中のレスイズモアであるとか、装飾は罪であるとか、そういう感覚は当然影響を受けていると思います。
I would say that there must be a link because modernization was westernization in Japan. So yes, probably the idea of less is more and ornamentation is not the greatest things probably came into Japan as well.
Thank you. And I think we probably have time for one more question. If there is one more question. Adam, just down here on the right. Mitsui-san.
I was just wondering if you have observed a similar attitude in other areas of Western art, or even African art that is similar to what you've presented here.
そうですね。祝祭の場での装飾が熱狂を生むという場面は、日本に限らず、もちろんヨーロッパにも限らず、アジア、アフリカ、あるいは南米のさまざまな地域で実際目にしてもいます。アフリカ行ったことないんですけれどもね。
Yes, in the sense that I have observed that euphoric state being created by the embellishment in ceremonies, for example, in outside of Japan and in other countries of Asia and Europe. I've never been to Africa myself, but so I can't comment on that area.
I think there was one final question from Mitsui-Ray.
Yeah, I'm not so good at English, so let me ask in Japanese. はい、橋本さんの今回のレクチャーはとても先の段階に日本人としても行っていると思っていますので、ちょっと確認というか、聞きたいことがあります。
The lecture you gave was probably the most advanced and probably most complex as well. So there are a few things that I'd like to check and clarify with you. If that's
怖いな。
Yeah, I'm scared, actually.
改めて今回、私は展示のために12日間滞在してロンドンでいろんなものを見ましたが、やっぱり高級なものは大体どれもこう飾る方向に行くっていうのが世界中では同じことだと思うんですが。
So I stayed in the UK for 12 days for the installation of this exhibition and saw many things But what I've observed is that a lot of the luxurious items tend to be in the more directions of decoration, ornaments, and embellishment.
そう、なので今日の橋本さんのレクチャーで見たものは、もしかしたらこうイギリスの方というかヨーロッパの方には、高級なものが、飾っているのは当たり前だと思われるかもしれないなと思ったんですね。
So I thought a lot of the Europeans who listened to this talk would think that, but wouldn't it be normal for the luxurious item to be embellished?
と同時に利休の話がありまして、黄金の茶室と泰安という茶室を作った、土の茶室を作った人は同じ人ですね。
And also you mentioned Sen no Rikyu, who created both golden tea room as well as the earthen tea room, Heian.
なので、質問というかキーワード、私が今思ったキーワードは、新しく思ったことなので、うまく言えないんですが、何か日本に特徴的なのは、こう限界に行く、要は生きることと死ぬことが一緒だとか、金を作るのも土を作るのも、とにかくこう、臨界点を求めるというなんか癖があるのかなと。なんで金色かどうか、土かどうかというのはあんまり意味がないのかもしれないと今日聞いて改めて思いました。とにかく限界に行くということに特殊性を帯びているのかなと思いました。
But listening into your talk, I really felt like Japanese may have the tendencies of pushing the boundaries, really testing the limits, going to the extremes, whether it be gold or made of earth, for example. Really, so those two examples that you gave really pushed the boundaries to me, it seemed.
私もまだいろいろ考え中なのと、今日の、レクチャーのためにさっきまで、原稿を書いたり、パワーポイントを手直ししたりしていたので、まだ全然考えが実はまとまっていません。
Yes, honestly speaking, I was working on this presentation and the slides just before we started, so I don't think my ideas are fully formed, I have to say.
なので、質問としては、対立するもの、金色とこう土が対立するものみたいなことをおっしゃってたんですけど、それは同じなのか対立するのか、橋本さんはどう思われてますか？
はい、対立はしないと思ってます。
So my question was really I wanted to ask you, would you say gold and the earth are contrasting elements, or are they in conflict? And Hashimoto-san's answer was, no, I don't think they are in conflict at all.
はい、ありがとうございました。
Thank you.
I think that's probably a wonderful place to finish. Please join me in thanking Hashimoto Mari for such a fascinating presentation this evening. Thanks also to our interpreter, Kurosawa. And just before we wrap up, I'll just remind everybody you can go and see the exhibition. It's on until 8:30. You'll see it's delicate, it's intricate. There's a lot of things to bump into. So we're having to limit numbers to about 30 people. So if you do want to go, make your way over there quite speedily. The exhibition runs until early June. So you can see other things we've got coming up. A film season, films of Ozu, one of the masters of 20th century cinema. These are booking out so quickly. So if you are keen to come and see any of these screenings in the coming weeks and months, do check our website for more details. Thank you again. We look forward to welcoming you back soon. Good evening. Bye.